The previous basket is under review.
All right, welcome everybody. We have a very special edition of Basket Under Review today as we focus on the landscape across college basketball. Entering the 25-26 season, I am pleased to be joined today by Noreen Morris, 15th year as NEC Commissioner. She's been an amazing innovator across all college sports, really, in terms of realignment, in terms of positioning the NEC for strategic basketball initiatives. Several schools coming, several schools going, but always having a grip on where the NEC needs to be. And then also to her left is Ron Ratner. Ron, thank you so much for coming as well. Ron is the Senior Associate Commissioner with full men's basketball focus and responsibilities. And it's Ron's 26th year with the NEC. So I think between the two of you, we're looking at 41 combined years at the Northeast Conference. How are you both doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us on.
We're doing good. I think I need to update my bio. It's longer than 26 years now.
So what are we looking at? More closer to 45 combined?
28th year now. 28th, yeah.
28th. Wow. Yeah, I know how the website can be a little bit needs a little bit of a refresher after the summer. So we'll have to get that fixed up. But it's really the larger point is just how loyal and dedicated you both have been to the league. So maybe we should start there. What is it about working for the NEC that keeps you waking up every day, fired up to work for this conference? And we'll start with you, Ron.
Yeah, I mean it's been a long time since the 90s, and I love everything about this league and what we stand for, and the purity of what college athletics, in my mind, should be is what we do here, creating everything around the student athlete and their experience. And we always talk about there's no Lear Jets here. It's you got to grind in this place, and we do that here as a staff, and our schools do it, and I'm proud of everything that we've accomplished in my time here.
That's terrific. And for Noreen, how about for you?
Yeah, I 100% echo what Ron just said, and I'll just add, I think it's the people that really make this league, in particular our staff. I mean, Ron and Andy, Allie in our office both have 28 years, but I think our least senior person right now on staff is going on their 4th year. So we have incredible loyalty and commitment to the NEC from our staff. And so that really helps everybody, like getting up and it's a grind, right? Once championships and games start in August, I mean, shoot, women's soccer started the weekend of August 14th this year, and all the way through June. And it's we've got 25 sports, and the people here in this league, not only in the conference, but our athletic administrators, they're all committed to the right things, which is the student athlete experience. And as Ron said, our approach is one of athletics should be part of their experience in college. It should not be the only thing that they're experiencing. So we are really focused, and our schools, our presidents, on the academics, on getting involved in the community, and developing these students so when they graduate, they can move on to be really contributing members of society, right? So we'll have a few that go pro and do things in their sport moving forward, but mostly it's knowing that athletics plays that integral role in their development as people.
No, that's terrific. And I think, with everything in college sports from the top down right now, it's a wild time. And I, of course, just focus on college basketball, but it's such a big business itself. Obviously, a lot of the members come and go, maybe more pertaining to football as a heavier force, but men's basketball definitely doesn't play too small of a role in that either. And I just, I guess, for Ron, going back to you, just your kind of initial temperature check as we enter 2025. I think most of the leagues I cover, whether you want to call them low major, mid majors, I basically just call them the other 26 if you're not in the Power 5 or at least in those top 8 or 9 leagues. Maybe the other 22 is more appropriate. It seems like if you have an all-conference player, that's not graduating, there's a good chance there's going to be an offer made now, and that player's probably hitting the portal and moving what we would consider up the ranks of college basketball. Do you think that's a good thing? And where do you think the NEC stands? I think the NEC's just done a tremendous job, not only getting the best of Division II to join the league, but also recruiting players that can come from lower divisions and play in the NEC.
I think first of all, I think we have great coaches. It's one of the things that I think is not talked about enough is the coaches in this league, from recruiting to game planning to in-game coaching. And we understand that, there are predators out there. They're going to look for our players. That's the way it is at every level.
It's
as you walk up
Yep.
from us to other mid-majors and you go all the way up to the non-power fives, you're going to lose players, and we understand that. But we're also going to get players back. So the transfer portal has helped us. It's hurt us in both ways. As we enter this year, it is actually refreshing to see we have a couple of all-conference players actually returning, which is very cool to see because, does that give you a leg up? Absolutely. But I was going through the rosters this morning in prep for this and just looking at some of the transfer talent that's come in. And I know that our coaches can do more with less. And if you give them some good players that can come in, they can do some great things. So I'm more optimistic this year than I have been the last couple of years coming back, because I think we have, and we can talk more about it, but I think we have one team that's going to be very, very good. Mm-hmm. And then I think we have some others bubbling underneath that people may not know about, but may be in store for a better or big season.
Well, we definitely should touch on that towards the end. I think that's what we're all excited about. I think just, Noreen, going back to what we've talked about in the past, the NEC's place kind of in the D1 March Madness world never ceases to stop fascinating me. It surprised me even this morning when I did some extra notes. It's now been 12 years in a row that the NEC champion's been a part of the first four. And when we talked several years back, I know that you were one of the first people I had ever talked to that was open about wanting to be in the first four. Obviously, the financial unit component is a motivator, and it's about a 50-50 shot if you win the game. I think the NEC is exactly 5-5 in the last 10 years in that one game. Do you want to talk about that, and if the NEC's stance on being part of that extra playing game has changed since then?
Yeah, I think the question is really around if you're a 16 seed. I think if you're a 16 seed, we'd much rather be a 16 seed in Dayton than a 16 seed in the first round after first four. We don't aspire to be in Dayton, but if you are going to be a 16 seed, then for sure, having that opportunity to play a team that's more aligned and more of a peer than a number one seed. We would love to get a 15 or a 14 seed. In fact, we've been primed to do that, but then the team that was primed for that 15 doesn't make it out of the tournament, right? So it's a shot. Like everything has to come together. In order for us to get that 15-14 seed. And it doesn't always happen, right? Because championships are played for a reason. It's, who's got the best in them in the last 3 games of the year. And it's not always that team that we hoped maybe would win to get that 15 seed. But the first four has really become an amazing experience for student athletes. Dayton's done a great job of managing that and making it feel special, and the ability to be the first games played. There's only 2 games that night that you're playing, whether Tuesday or Wednesday. And so the exposure there and the excitement around basketball starting, it brings the universities totally engaged, and it's great exposure for us. And then, of course, like you said, we've had some wins and some big wins, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that Purdue win still sends shivers, right? You're just like, that was an amazing day for us and for the NEC, and it really showed how competitive a team could be regardless of what that makeup is. And so we don't, if you'd ask me, do you Is that where you aspire? First four? No. But if we're 16 seed, absolutely yes. And all the commissioners, we kind of like joke, no, it's my turn to go to the first four.
Yeah.
Because you have an opportunity to win that unit. And the unit's the same value as a unit if you were to beat a number one seed in that first round.
I mean, I look at this season, there's
Yep.
3 stages to every season. There's part 1 is up until January 1. And that's where you set the ceiling for the league. Like, you find out who your best teams are, and you kind of know at that point, well, probably the highest we could go is this seed. Then that team, over the next 2 months after that, has to perform in our league, to get a high seed to host games, which is what everybody wants to do, to hopefully get that final game in their own gym. But then it's like the 3 games in March, and that's the great equalizer for everybody. And sometimes that team that's performed brilliantly all year, and we can look at Central Connecticut last year, who had an unbelievable
last 2
season.
years. Yeah.
Not going to be in the play-in game, was not going to be a 16 seed, just got tripped up in a very close game that went right down to the wire. And that's the magic of March. It can help you, it can hurt you. We saw it in FDU Purdue, where like the magic, you strike, you strike lightning, and it happens for you. But you can also lose a first 4 game at the buzzer, like we did last year on a miracle play, and it's not a great feeling. That's what March is all about.
Yeah, that's interesting because last year's tournament, I think got a lot of grumpy people in the first couple rounds. There wasn't too many close games, and we looked back and we're like, that Alabama State St. Francis Pennsylvania game was probably the best game of the first, 3 or 4 rounds until we got to the Final Four, where we did have some really good games. But yeah, the NEC always sends an amazingly tough representative, even with Central Connecticut being upset, of course. Though the Wagner team from a couple of years ago, I mean, that was an unbelievable run to win 3 straight road games. And so maybe we could talk about a little bit of the NEC tournament format, just how special that is. Please tell me there's no plans to change that. The on-campus games.
Yeah, Ron is the keeper of all things men's basketball in our tournament. But from like you said, our tournament format is the perfect format for us. As Ron said, you fight for home game. So regular seasons mean something, right? Not only getting qualified for the tournament, but getting that home game, which is so important. And then being able to play our final, semifinals and final in front of a packed house, and the energy level. It's just great experience for our student athletes, and it shows great on ESPN, and different from some of our peers who play neutral site, and you don't always get that same energy. So we're committed to that format, and Ron's got the historical perspective on having tried different things that didn't really work.
We've tried it all. I always say, the longer I stay here, we will try everything in every facet of college sports. So we had a couple of years where we did a neutral site. We got derailed by the storm of the century one year on our championship game day, which hurt us. But we've done variations where we played a couple rounds at a neutral site, finals go home. We've been with this format for a long time, and I think what it does the best is it just gives so much, as Noreen said, so much meaning to the regular season, because there's levels of it. Like, you want to be the 1 seed so you can host the final. You want to be a top 2 seed so you can host a semi. You want to be a top 4 seed so you can host a quarterfinal. And then you have to finish in the top 8 to qualify. So there's no playing out the string in this conference. Everybody's playing for something, typically to the last day when we're sorting out all the tiebreakers. So I think it's just a fun league. And then once it gets to that format where you're going from site to site to site, if you're a road team like what Wagner did a few years ago, that's amazing. That is an amazing accomplishment what they did. What we have found, though, is that the team that hosts the final, it hasn't always been kind to them. I think the visiting team might have a winning record, but if you ask any coach, they're going to want to play that game at home and in front of their crowd, in front of that amazing atmosphere, instead of in a saccharine atmosphere where it's a half-empty arena. We love packing our places and showing off our gyms, our arenas to the country in that atmosphere. And that's the day where I feel like it's my favorite day of the year, where we walk through and you feel the energy of the students and that packed house, knowing that they're going to be on national TV.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the NEC's got the reputation, honestly. I mean, I'm out here in the Bay Area, California. I've only lived on the West Coast, and I've been watching NEC tournaments for as long as I can remember, because there's nothing quite like those, those smaller, intimate environments, and it's really, really loud. I mean, I'm still thinking of that run that LIU Brooklyn had in the early 2010s, where that place seemed deafening, even though I was never in the gym. Just watching it, you could tell.
It was.
And there's so many examples of that. That's just an easy one that quickly comes to mind. And so it's refreshing, I think, from just a college basketball community standpoint. Like, I think there's a deep appreciation for what you do. And I think that's really important. And I think it's also important, the format that you have, because meaningful basketball, I mean, I don't know if there's anything more pressure-packed than the Ivy League, where they only take 4 teams to their tournament, but it is pressure-packed to try to get that bye, to try to get those home games, to try to qualify. So I also think that's the route that more leagues need to follow, what you've created. Now let's just take a step back. There's all this talk, and I know you're probably I don't know how involved the NEC even gets, or if they're even asked. But with the talk of going to 72, 76, 96, whatever the number is going to be, I think everybody's starting to accept that tournament expansion is coming soon. And we'll see what that looks like. And there's all sorts of formats that have been thrown out there. Some of them might not even be actual proposals. I'm curious if you've seen any kind of proposal that would maybe impact that opportunity to play a play-in or a first 4 type of game, or if maybe they go back to putting the AQ straight in the bracket. Have you guys been privy to that? And if you were privy, if you're not yet, what is your preference for the future of, the highest generating revenue sport for your league, or revenue event, I should say?
Right. Yeah, there's been a lot of formats discussed, number, how many you're going to expand by. Personally, I like the way the first 4 is done now, where there's half of the games are the AQs and half are at-larges. And I would think from, the only way to expand is if there is some additional revenue coming in to cover those extra teams, because each team that competes will then have access to a unit, right? So there's real dollars at stake here. So my guess is if the media partners agree to invest more money to expand the tournament, they're going to want to have eyes on the television for those extra games. And my personal opinion is having all of the AQs in a playing game rather than splitting it half and half would not be to the benefit of our media partners, or to the benefit of leagues like ours, where all of the AQs, let's say, get into the playing game. Then it really minimizes and almost makes it feel like a JV varsity feel, right? And so, again, I'm talking personally, I would much prefer we keep the same type of format. So if you expand by 8 teams, 2 more games of AQs and 2 more games of at-larges. And obviously you have to figure out the format. You can't do them all in Dayton. They'd have to figure out other places that could accommodate. But, I like you, I think expansion is likely inevitable if the finances can be worked out. And I'm not entirely opposed to that based on certain conferences' desire to have access to more championship spots. But I also don't want to water down the product so much that now March Madness isn't. It's a secret sauce right now. We've got it. It's there's the way it's played out, the first 4, all the round. I mean, it just works, right? Yep. And so why fix something that's not broken? And I do think that expanding by a few is not a terrible idea, as long as you don't create this, us versus them type of format.
Yeah, good.
It's the perfect tournament. Like she said it. If it's not, don't fix it. It is perfect the way it is. as you know, championing this league and mid majors in general, I do not need to see the 11th and 12th place teams of a major conference in this tournament.
Thank you.
If you're going to expand and it's going to be the second place team from a mid major with 29 wins that is unable to get teams to come to their gym in the first 2 months of the season and go out and play road games, okay, you can probably sell me on a few more teams. But I think it's perfect the way it is, and I think that's how most fans feel.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and for the record, I'm right there with you guys. I'm just preparing for what's to come. You know, you always have to be prepared, and I know you're preparing as a league, so it's always good to just get a little bit of insight on what your preference would be, because I think the purist wants to see that maybe doesn't understand the financial components, right? They want to see at least one team in the main bracket every year, but the NEC has proven being part of the first four can be just as beneficial. At least, you know, the 6 units you've been able to accrue in the last decade, I'm sure it has a meaningful impact on what you've been able to do since as a conference. So I think it's just really interesting to explore, and I can't think of a better league to explore it with than you. So thank you for being so candid. How about overall postseason play? Now with the NIT changes, I think last year they made a nice change to get mid-major basketball in general back involved. It was really refreshing for the soul to see Chattanooga and UC Irvine in the championship game. But I do recognize probably the bottom 10 or so conferences, there's still not very much access, if at all, based on your net ranking and all of that having to qualify for the NIT. We also saw the College Insider Tournament go away in the last couple of years. And so really we're down to the NIT and their rules now. The CBI has, I think there is probably angles maybe for an NEC team to get into the CBI, but although that's probably difficult as well. Is there anything the NEC can do as a league to try to impact allowing more postseason access outside of the automatic qualifier for the NCAA? And Ron, that's for you.
Yeah, I don't know what we can do to impact it. It was very disappointing when the NIT changed their rules.
Yeah.
We had won games as the 8th seed, in the 1-8 seeding. We won 2 games back-to-back, I think it was back-to-back years, where we knocked off the one.
And
I think,
Kentucky,
sometimes it's really hard in the NIT to get your team that lost, and maybe your regular season champ that lost, to get them up for that game. And we would do that, and we had some success there. So we were super disappointed when that happened. Our coaches in general have not been a big fan of some of those other tournaments, of the CI. We've played in them, the CIT, the CBI, the kind of the pay-for-play championships, weird travel, no real brackets. We wish there were more opportunities with well-run events that would feature, especially, feature some of the mid-majors. I think we all can agree on that, but I'm not sure that some of these tournaments have kind of figured it out yet to make it appealing to the masses.
Yeah, and with the transfer portal and so much movement, it's sometimes really hard to have a team that has enough bodies even to play in a postseason tournament at the point in time, because last year the transfer portal was open by then.
I know.
I don't forget what the window will be for this upcoming year, but that's difficult. And to Ron's point, we were really disappointed about the change in the rules for the AQ, and that was really a result of the NCAA trying to stay more relevant and try to attract more teams to fight off some of these new kind of really pay for play instead of pay to play postseason championships. So I understand why the NCAA felt they needed to make that change, although I didn't agree with it from our perspective.
Yeah, is there anything the NEC can do when some of these larger decisions are made?
Well, it's interesting with the NIT is it's run by a board. It's owned and operated by the NCAA, but it's run by a board, and the board makes the decisions. It's not conference vote in an NCAA governance structure. So we really don't have a lot of access to decision making with NIT rules and regulations. It's done through the board and not through the regular governance structure. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I mean, like Ron mentioned, a couple of those incredible memories from more NEC history is from those NIT upsets. Of course, the Robert Morris over Kentucky game will be remembered forever by a lot of us. Noreen, that kind of plays into my next question for you. Like all these changes with the top of college sports being about revenue generating opportunities. Like today, I woke up and read an article about Penn State having to sign a deal with an insurance company, and now the insurance company is going to be on the football field there. Obviously, that level is dealing with all different types of their own challenges to try to stay ahead of the curve and be able to afford, the new demands of, staying at the top of their sport and then also attracting the talent. But obviously, as we talked about a little bit earlier, that has a trickle-down effect all the way through, and we'll just focus on men's basketball. The talent acquisition that the NEC can do or what the NEC can do. And then also within realignment, this can be kind of partnered with that approach as well, where, if teams decide to make a move and you have to do your own pivoting, you've obviously demonstrated you can do that well. But do you have alliances across maybe other similar conferences? Like I think of like the Ohio Valley or maybe more regional like the America East or Metro Atlantic, where you guys can band together to figure out how to survive some of these storms that have been coming?
Yes and no. Like in terms of a formal alignment or alliance, we don't have that, although the commissioners do talk quite a bit on like how can we position ourselves. Are there some things from a policy standpoint, from a governance standpoint, from a basketball, we've tried over time to do some scheduling alliances, and they all sound great in concept until you tell the coaches, oh, by the way, you're playing this team on this date at this location, and they don't really like the conference telling them when and where to play. So we have not been that successful in that realm, but really given the geography of our league and other peer leagues, there's so much interconference competition just by nature of scheduling and folks trying to find good games within a bus ride away instead of getting on a plane. So I would say that we do a really good job of playing each other in the regular season, and then movement, I would say, like Ron said, our coaches have done a great job of adapting to this new world, knowing that they may just have a player for 1 year.
Yeah.
But they know that player will make them better for that 1 year, and that they can help develop that player if they were going to get another opportunity. Mm-hmm. But like Ron said, I think when a lot of student athletes, if you can show you care enough, that might make a difference. Kind of create that family atmosphere that, hey, I'm looking out for you and your future, and that might mean you stay another year and develop further, or you graduate here and then you can move to another place. So I think our coaches have done a great job of recruiting the right people and also trying to lean into them as people, and hopefully that'll make the difference and have a little more retention.
I think you're getting more and more as the portals comes year after year. You're getting more and more of the grass is not greener stories.
Yeah.
And you see people transferring from a great situation, whether it's from this league or another league. And sometimes it's a lateral move. Sometimes they're moving up to a more competitive league, and it just doesn't pan out. And sometimes the best place to be is where you're comfortable and where your friends are, and you're comfortable with your coaching staff. And I think we saw it a little bit more this year. It's still the portals. It hurts. It definitely hurts. But I think our coaches do a great job in making their institutions, sort of the place to be, and giving them that it's almost like comfort food, like being in your school that you're at, being happy with your teammates and your coaching staff. And I think that's something we need to do and lean into as a league.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I'm trying to think of an NEC coach I've talked to a bunch of them this off season, but just in general, coaches have really started to embrace. I found it really interesting if a star player transfers out and then ends up having a great year. Like, for example, I'll just use the national champions. Like Florida had a handful of guys in their starting lineup that played at lower levels before, and each of those programs I went and talked to, and they're now using that as part of their recruiting pitch. Look who he developed. He went on, and yes, he didn't win the national championship here, but we helped facilitate that. He would not be the same player if he didn't come through our program. They can use that as a recruiting tool. Are you seeing that a little bit, Ron, across the NEC where it exists?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to look at players. Like if you get a JUCO player, you're getting them for 2 years, and maybe you just got to reassess. And if you get as a freshman and they're super talented, it could be a 1 or even a 2 year window where you have that player. So like we are in some ways a land of opportunity, and we develop, our coaches develop players, and they do a great job of that. And that's one of the things that I think we've had some success because of the coaches, and we've had some continuity with our coaches as well. And we've kept coaches even after they've won the NEC tournament, and they've come back and they've just built on their programs.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. It's so fluid too, and I think you're right, Ron. I think over time, basketball had a head start on the portal, I think, well before football and several other sports. So we should have more mature data so players can make more educated decisions and pass that education back down to them. As there's so much we learn each year. I feel like that. So. We got to talk real quick about membership. I think that's the big news across the league. Welcome New Haven Chargers. That's exciting. Of course, playing their first home game against aforementioned Penn State. That's a big story as well. And then also, I think the other big story is the suddenly eligible Stonehill Skyhawks. They'll have the ability to play for the AQ this year, and then with the accelerated transition process, Lemoyne the following year, and Mercyhurst in 28, and then of course New Haven in 29. And again, I'm just recapping for the audience real quick, but Mercyhurst was not allowed to play last year, and I've read up and I've heard Noreen speak enough now to know that it's a 2-year, 2-team at a time eligible as the transitions keep rolling through. So this year, Mercyhurst will be eligible along with Lemoyne again, and then eventually New Haven eligible in the 27 tournament. Do I have that correct?
You do. A+ for you on your homework assignment.
Thank you. Well, conference tournaments is there's nothing bigger in my world. So how did the rule come to be, by the way? Just with no more than 2. Why not take all 3?
We looked at it from a holistic standpoint across all of our sports. And when we were contemplating bringing in a third reclassifying member, that was one of the things we talked about. It's a challenge, right? Because most of our championship format are 4-team formats. And so if you have 4 teams and 3 of them are reclassifying, then already who's going to be your AQ before a game is played. Not ideal for a lot of different reasons. From a competitive standpoint, from a
just
branding,
audience
interest,
yeah. Sure.
all of that. And so what we did was we said, for the good of the league, and for us being able to send our best 4 teams to the tournament, and to be clear on who's eligible, we came up with a rule that only 2 teams at any given time, and so it's by first in gets that opportunity. And so you mentioned the acceleration of Stonehill. The NCAA did adopt a new process. Instead of the required 4 years for those already in the reclassification process, they had the opportunity to stay in the 4-year process or go to the 3-year process. But that 3-year process had some benchmarks on the way out of the system, which one is financial. You had a certain number of athletics scholarships and total athletics scholarship spend, but it's also academic. Every team on your campus would have to have a minimum APR score. Every team. So if you have one team that didn't make the minimum number, you can't leave and go into D1. You'd be in purgatory until you could meet that benchmark. And so Stonehill is obviously they had already committed from a financial perspective, so meeting the finances were no problem. And academically, they're a great school, and so they had no problems meeting those benchmarks. And so, it was a really quick turnaround. It wasn't voted on until January, and they had until June to do an academic review, to do a compliance review, to finish their self-study. It was a heavy lift, but they were committed to doing it, and we're very thankful for the work they put in, because now we do have them as eligible, helps us with our numbers, and then it really kind of paved the way then for Lemoyne and then Mercyhurst both to commit to doing the 3 years as well. And then New Haven, obviously coming in, doesn't have a choice. They have to go with a new three-year structure. And they knew all those rules coming in.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I knew there were a lot of benchmarks there. We recently put out a story about the 6 schools that are now eligible for the tournament on an accelerated 3-year track. I think there was only 6; they all got through nationally. Great to have Stonehill part of that. And I noticed in all 6 cases, at least from a basketball point of view, they were able to leverage the transfer portal a little bit better, at least optically. I could be wrong if it gave them any provable advantage, but certainly a lot of momentum at all 6 places, including Stonehill, who I think will have a chance to compete at least in the top 4 of the NEC going into the league. Would you agree with that, Ron?
100%. Yeah. They returned a couple good players, and then they brought in some excellent players as well. So Chris Kraus he's a really good coach. This is a guy you're going to start to hear about, because he can, when he has talent. I love what they run. I love their system. It's a fun system to play in. And it's an entertaining system for the fans, and they have good fan support up there. So I think they might be primed for a big season this year.
Yeah, that's cool. I got to get up there for a game. I had a good friend go last year. She raved about the experience going through gates and getting in there, and it was so beautiful. And so that's one of the ones I still need to see. I've got most of the NEC, but you keep adding more. So actually, I had the chance to visit Mercyhurst about a month and a half ago. It was beautiful up in Erie. I felt like it was a little better maybe than trying to go in the season. Nothing against the climate there, but it can get very windy. Noreen, back to you a little bit on the transition process. So I think as part of the accelerated transition, not too long after, maybe it was part of the same governance decisioning, the requirements for a D2 to move to D1, at least from a financial operating budget, moved up a layer. I think it's maybe more expensive and things of that nature. Do you want to talk about if there are concerns now of the simplicity of maybe, I don't want to call it simplicity. I know it was never easy to move up from D2 to D1, but do you think it's going to be tougher for a team to move up once they might think twice about moving up based on the new requirements?
Yeah, well, interesting question, because I was involved in helping try to craft the recommendation as a prior chair of the Strategic Vision and Planning Committee of the NCAA. And so we spent hours and hours looking at data and tried to come up with the metrics and the benchmarks that made sense, where it held folks accountable to committing to be D1, but also recognizing that you can't hold new members to a standard that's higher, really, than your current members. So it's a bit of a kind of a tricky situation. So we came to this metrics that were based on being higher than the lowest 10%. So it wasn't extremely high bar, but it's a bar that never existed before.
Okay.
There was never benchmarks or minimums to meet to come into the system. The admission fee, so to speak, application fee went up back probably 7 years ago. It used to be $15,000. And then they changed it to being the application fee is 1/2 of the average revenue distribution that a Division I school receives. And so that number was, I think, close to $1.9 million this year, or maybe slightly higher than 1.9.
Wow.
So that number didn't change in this new iteration, but what has changed since they passed the new D2 or D3 to D1 reclassification is the D1 board on August 5th voted a moratorium for Division III and Division II schools joining Division I through June of 2027. So they've closed the door for the next 2 years for any new D2 or D3 school to come in, unless there was already some letter of interest prior between a conference and a school, and they can prove that they had already started having conversations before August 5th. So that door being shut is really kind of creates not a problem for us, but that we can't go out and recruit a D2 school into the ranks, which was kind of very helpful for us to get New Haven in when we did, because they had been aspiring to be D1
Right.
for a number of years, but due to presidential change and AD change and that kind of put on the back burner, and so their new president is a former men's tennis player at Vanderbilt. They have a new AD who's been at D2, D1. The two of them together are a force, I must say. They are in lockstep. They have more energy and more passion, and they really work fast, but efficiently. And so I'm really excited to have New Haven in. They've brought some energy. Their scheduling, I mean, kudos to them for putting a schedule together. And they didn't start until May.
Yeah.
Is when we brought them in, I think was the announcement.
May 12th, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they put together a football schedule, which is pretty amazing to do when you're cut off from your regular season from your previous conference. And for basketball, Penn State, Columbia,
They're playing UConn.
I think, right?
Yeah.
And so they did. Devin is a mover shaker. Devin
Yeah.
Crosby, the AD there. So he really took advantage of the contacts that he's made over his career, and just, I mean, the speed in which he was able to do that was mind-boggling. So we're excited to have them aboard.
And maybe the Vanderbilt connection helped there too, because they are going to Vanderbilt as well.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. No, the good thoughts there. It's all fascinating. And just quick follow up on that. What do you think that means for the next time an NEC member makes a move? I mean, I just feel like we've seen so many different things happen out of the NEC's control, even where, one St. Francis tragically closes the doors. Another St. Francis that goes down to Division III. Those two schools were bedrocks. You obviously have a lengthy list now since Noreen, just since you've been there in 2010. We've seen Monmouth.
We don't need to.
We don't need to talk. We don't need to name names, but there's been teams that have other interests for different reasons, right? So what's the strategy, or maybe you're still figuring that out now that there might be more challenges to bringing up a D2 team?
Yeah, I think there's so many challenges right now in higher ed. And I say higher ed for a reason. Presidents are getting hit from all sides, right? So there's finance, there's politics, there's funding, and then you've got the House settlement and all that comes with that. And so I do think that as schools think about their future, there are so many more components that they have to take into account. And the cost of doing business continues to rise, and if you opt in, that cost will continue to rise. There are fees associated with opting in that schools that are not opting in don't have to pay, and I think that will make some decisions harder for schools as they try to figure out where they want to go and if they want to go somewhere else, and if they're going to a league that requires opt-in, requires minimum spend on NIL, which you're seeing in some conferences. I mean, there's a lot more to take into account when you're thinking about where should we be. Entry, exit fees still exist. And then, of course, House settlement and then reductions of everyone has a revenue reduction based on the House back pay formula. And so, it's just a difficult time right now. And so I think making decisions on moving from one conference to another, it's going to have to be under more of a microscope than it ever has been.
Yeah, it's all fascinating. I don't want to water anything down. I know the NEC's always been on the up and up in terms of knowing how and when to pivot, usually well ahead of schedule, and just nothing but kudos for that. And I'm sure that will continue, but we're all just trying to figure out how to navigate. And it's just great to have both your perspectives, because in Division I college basketball, I just don't think there's enough representation for leagues of your stature, even though there's such a great history and foundation. And that leads me back to basketball. Let's keep it exciting here as we wrap up. Ron, I've heard really amazing things about Central Connecticut, even though they have a lot to replace. Coach Sellers has done an amazing job at the program there, of course, dominating the last 2 regular seasons. Of course, trying to figure out a way to get the automatic qualifier one of these years. But then Malachi Davis and LIU, he's probably going to be voted the player of the year. Those two stand out to me, but what are you looking forward to most about the actual basketball we're going to see on the court?
Yeah, I'm super excited. First, for LIU, you look at that team that they have coming back, and Malachi Davis he's just a whirlwind, and he is, maybe the most exciting player in the league. He's part of our weekly plays of the week almost every week because he does something so special out there, and he's just unguardable. Yeah. So having him back is a treat. It's a treat for just me as a NEC Hoops fan to get to watch him for another 30-plus games this year. And Jamal Fuller is another all-star coming back, like one of those versatile wing players that can just do everything. So, and those are coveted at every level. So you have them, and they have a great rookie, Shadrach Lasso, who's coming back, who was one of our best freshmen last year. And then you look at some of the players that they brought in, like some of the recruits. So they're loaded, they're deep. I think last year they were very good, but if you ask Coach Strickland, what hurt them the most was they didn't have the depth, and they were running out 6 players, 7 players a game. Right. Now I think they're 10 deep, and they brought in Greg Gordon, who was a great player at Iona, and then went on to UAB, and they brought some size in too. A couple of 7-footers. So I think they're going to be a challenging team to play, not just in our league. I think they're throughout their entire non-conference schedule. Right. I think they're going to be pretty good. And then Central's like Pat Sellers he's an amazing, he's an alum. He loves that program. Yeah. And he pours his heart and soul into it. And I know that how disappointed they were with how last season ended after such a magical run throughout the whole year. But he just reloads every year. And he's got a couple of good players coming back. But he goes out and he really recruits players that can thrive in what they do and their commitment to defense and getting up and down the court. So I think those teams, and I think Stonehill is going to be very good, as we talked about. And then you have others who just sort of restocked in the portal, and it's hard to assess them. But teams like FDU and Mercyhurst, some of them, and Wagner, there's the consistency may not be there, but they always seem to bring in good young talent. And then you have coaches who can work that talent, and we'll see where they land this year.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think, Wagner's actually got a good amount of experience as well. I don't know, they got a good talent ranking, and of course, they always play suffocating defense and rebound, which might not be every fan's favorite thing to watch, but I absolutely love it. It's almost like a mini Big East, to where you get those games a lot. I think you have some overlap with Big East officials, if I understand correctly, where some of those games officiated the same way, and I think that can benefit a Wagner program. It certainly has in the past, and they've got a good amount coming back. And I'm actually going to be out at a Fairleigh Dickinson practice in early October, so I'm looking forward to that. Jack Castleberry is an old friend of mine, so that's all I really had for today. Noreen, did you have any other final thoughts? I think the one thing I had was I didn't mention Chicago State. I certainly meant to. A strategic move by the league to get into the Chicago market. Maybe we could touch on that briefly, where it opens the door for you to maybe get into more metros, if that's the way you got to look to expand the league. Or do you like maybe sticking around the 8 or 9 number for total conference members in men's basketball?
Yeah, I think from a total conference members, even numbers better for scheduling. Yep. More is better than less from a holistic standpoint, because we have 25 sports. Not everyone sponsors every sport. So the more leagues, the more schools you can bring in, the more opportunities you have to have a strength in numbers for your AQs in all your sports. And so Chicago State was a great ad for us. Like you said, it gets us in the Chicago market. It also gave us strength in numbers for D1 members. And it was kind of a win-win situation. They were looking for home, and we were looking to strengthen our numbers, and we really did like the idea of getting into the Chicago market from a recruiting standpoint, but not necessarily just athletics. For institutional recruiting, right? The branding of your university into a region you haven't been before. You might be able to attract new students, attract just new fans. And so it was really a bigger picture. It wasn't just about athletics. It was more about what does it do for our institutions as a whole. And so I think it was a total win-win. And, they've seen some success, and they've had some coaching changes. Their women's coach did a great job bringing that team through towards the end of the season and got them into the semifinal. Semifinal.
Yeah.
And on the men's side, I think they're going to be able to build out as well. They've got a great facility.
They do. They do.
It's really exciting to be able to play games there. Their president and their athletic director, like the New Haven team I talked about, are great tag team and incredibly committed to building Chicago State into a powerhouse in Chicago and elsewhere. So I really like Z. Scott, president, Monique Carroll as the athletic director. They're very talented and good people. And so I want to end
That's awesome.
like everyone we're talking about. You talk about Jack Castleberry, our coaches. All of our coaches are just good, strong, solid people who are doing the job for the love of the job and wanting to make a difference in people's lives, and not because they're making $1 million. That's the beauty of this place, is that the people really make it. And I can't say that loud enough, right? That's why we, Ron and I think love this league, is it's the people and why they're doing what they're doing. It's all for the right reasons. And that's that. I'm proud of that. That's kind of the commitment that we've made.
Yeah, I mean, I deal with the coaches a lot, and this group is by far the easiest group that I've ever had to deal with. They're good people. Noreen said it perfectly. From all the way from, it doesn't matter if you finish first or you finish last in the league. Like there seems to be a synergy among them. They all get along with each other.
That's
they have a group text chain where I'll work with the chair, and then they will talk to each other internally. So it's a really good group, and it's like I'm super looking forward to this season and to see what we can do. And hopefully we can rattle some sabers out there, like get some good wins in November and December and set the stage for what is going to come a few months later.
No, I'm excited too. I appreciate both of you coming on and doing this. And I think, the other point I'll just make is the teams that have transitioned or still transitioning from D2, you can't really work in D2 college basketball unless you really know how to work hard. That any D2 coach will tell you that, and that carries over now into the NEC, even with your veteran coaches. I think you've definitely got some future stars both on the coaching side and certainly inevitably on the player side. So thank you again for all your time. I'd love to do it again sometime. I absolutely love and am passionate about your league as well. And if we don't do this soon enough, I hopefully will see you in a gym soon as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us and your continued support.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Rocco. This was fun.
My pleasure. Yeah, we'll look to do it again. And he's Ron Ratner, the Senior Associate Commissioner, Head of Men's Basketball for the NEC. She's Noreen Morris, the Commissioner of the NEC. I'm Rocco Miller for Basket Under Review. Thank you for joining us.